Hello and welcome to class. My name is Tati, and in today's beginner-friendly yoga class we'll be going nice and slow to break down all of the poses. So when I say beginner-friendly, I mean if you have never done yoga before, then this is a good class for you to get started off. I'll break down each pose super slowly. We won't be doing anything crazy, and hopefully it'll be a nice taster for you to see what yoga is all about. Remember, if there are any poses that feel completely uncomfortable in your body, if this is one of the first few times, 5 or 10 times, or even the very first time that you're trying them, be gentle on your body, listen to the limits of your body, and know that the more that you practice, the more comfortable you'll get in the poses. Yoga has a lot of elements of flexibility, which people typically think of when they think of yoga, but there are also a lot of elements of strength. So we build strength, and that often makes the poses a lot easier. So as I mentioned, my name is Tati. Today we'll be using a yoga mat. If you don't have a yoga mat, you can use a towel, but it is always helpful to have an actual mat, even if it's just an exercise mat, not specifically a yoga mat. But having a nice yoga mat is obviously nice if you want a bit of added grip. There are so many on the market to look out for. Some have different thicknesses. But if you just want to have a taster to see if yoga is for you, you don't need anything super fancy. I started off with a super cheap little mat in my bedroom in my university dorm, so you really don't need anything too fancy. And with that, I'd say let's get started in a cross-legged position. So for a lot of us, sitting in a cross-legged position can actually be really uncomfortable, especially if we're used to sitting at a chair, at a desk, and we haven't spent any time sitting on the floor. So if this feels super uncomfortable, then you can definitely slide something like a pillow or block underneath the hips. So you're just sitting on top of a block, and that helps elevate the hips, and you can find a nice tall spine. If this again isn't working, you can always stretch the legs out a little bit in front of you, or place the feet on the mat with the knees bent. So just play around here and see what feels comfortable. If it doesn't feel at all comfortable, that's also okay. It takes a little while to get used to sitting on the floor. So once you find your cross-legged position, so finding a nice tall spine, and by nice tall spine I mean a nice straight line, so not rounding forward or sitting skew, just finding a nice tall spine, opening the chest so the shoulders are relaxed away from the ears. We're not drawing them up, just letting the tension go. The hands can rest on the knees. And if it feels comfortable, you might like to close your eyes. Otherwise, just soften the gaze. So closing your eyes about 50% and just gazing somewhere on the floor in front of you. And taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. And exhale out through the mouth. Taking another nice deep breath in, feeling the whole lung, chest area expand. And exhale, release it out. In yoga, the breath is one of our most useful tools, so you'll hear lots of yoga teachers cue throughout the class, remember the breath, and we use our inhalations and our exhalations to link the poses together. So that helps everything flow. It also makes sure that your body is nice and oxygenated. And when you get into tricky poses, sometimes we like to tense up and not breathe, and that actually makes the poses a lot harder. So if you just continue to naturally breathe, that really helps your practice. You don't have to force anything, it's just a normal, natural breath. So once you're here, picking up the hands, interlacing the fingers, and then rolling out the wrists. So drawing circles in one direction. And this helps to warm up the wrist joints. They might be feeling a bit tender, especially if we don't do much besides typing or sitting at our computer a lot. So warming up the wrist joints, switching directions. You might hear a few pops and cracks. That's completely normal. Warming up and lubricating our wrist joints. And then releasing the hands on the knees. And by now you might be feeling, I've had too much time sitting cross-legged, so we're going to find our way into a tabletop position. So for tabletop, placing the hands directly underneath the shoulders. The hands are spread wide, so fingers spread wide, and then placing them on the mat right underneath your shoulders. Spread the fingers and then checking behind you, so your knees are right underneath your hips and you have a nice straight spine. So it's not sagging down and you're not rounding up, you're just keeping a nice straight spine. Your chin can be slightly tucked in, it doesn't have to be exaggerated, just a little bit. And this is your tabletop position. So a lot of poses we'll be coming back to this position. And then to warm up our spine, and you might be familiar with this one, is cat-cow pose. So for our cow pose, we're going to drop the belly and press the hips up, and then broaden the chest. And by broaden the chest, I mean drawing the shoulders to the left and right, so you create this nice openness across the chest, gazing forward. And with the exhalation, I want you to press into your hands and round your spine. So you're forming a dome shape. You're pressing firmly into the mat, so the shoulders press away from the sockets and you're rounding. Chin can stay tucked, gazing behind you. And then inhale, reversing the curvature of the spine. So you're coming back into your cow pose, sinking the navel. And exhale, round. Inhale, coming back into cow pose. Broaden the chest. And exhale, round the spine. Good job. And just continue here. Inhale, coming into cow pose. And exhale, pressing the floor away, rounding the spine into cat. Inhale, cow pose. And exhale, round the spine, finding your cat pose. And then finding into a neutral spine. So you're finding back into that tabletop position. Just checking your alignment here. And then bringing the big toes to touch. Walking the knees, mat width distance apart. And start to sink your hips towards your heels. And maybe your bum doesn't quite reach your heels. That's fine if there's a little gap. Walk your hands forward, so towards the top of the mat. Palms are flat on the mat, and then start to rest your head down as far as it goes. So it'll be more comfortable if you can rest your forehead on the mat, but don't worry if you can't quite reach there. Maybe your forearms come to the mat, maybe not. Just finding into your first child's pose of the practice. And at any time during class, if you feel like it's getting too much, you can find into child's pose. This is our kind of home-based pose, and it's always here for you. So feel into this restorative pose. Feel the opening across the lower back. And exhale, slowly gazing forwards towards the hands, and then walking your hands towards your body. Finding back into that tabletop position. So hands underneath the shoulders, you're on your knees, and then tucking your toes. So tucking them, activating your core muscles, these ones over here. And then start to hover your knees up off the mat. So you're coming into this hovering tabletop position, starting to warm up the core. And exhale, press the hips up and back. So you're finding into this V-shaped position called downward facing dog. And I want you to check your alignment here. So your hands are about shoulder width distance apart, with the fingers spread. And if you look back, your feet are about hip width distance apart. So if you measure, it'll be about 2 fists next to each other between your big toes. And for the first down dog, keep a nice deep bend in the knee, and this will help bring your upper body towards your thighs. And it's more important to find this long length in your spine rather than straightening your legs. So you can always keep a little bend in your knee. If the heels are up off the mat, that's fine. Maybe play around a bit with the length of your down dog. So if we bring the feet very close to the body, it can feel quite uncomfortable. But equally, if the legs are super far away from your hands, then you get into this strange shape. So play around a bit here and see, because it's different for everybody. Everyone has different length legs, different length arms, and the proportion of the upper body and the lower body are different in everybody. So it's definitely worth finding your right alignment here. When you're in down dog, remember to take nice deep breaths. And inhale, gazing forward, and we're going to ripple forward into a high plank position. So you might want to adjust slightly forward. You're activating your core muscles, breathing in here, and exhale, lower the knees, and keeping the elbows tucked close to your body, and slowly lower your chest all the way down. So this is called chaturanga. We're doing it supported with the knees on the mat. From here, sliding your forearms forward. So your knees, your elbows are directly underneath your shoulders. Your forearms are parallel to one another with the palms flat on the mat. And that helps to open your chest. And you'll definitely feel a little back bend here. So your lower spine will have a curve in it. The backs of your feet are resting on the mat. Your pelvis is pressing into the mat. And then gently gazing forwards, finding into Sphinx pose. So here again, we're finding a gentle back bend. Exhale, release, sliding the hands underneath the shoulders, and then slowly pressing yourself up into tabletop position, walking the hands a bit closer, readjusting, checking again that the hands are underneath the shoulders, knees are underneath the hips, and then tucking the toes and pressing yourself back up into a downward facing dog. So downward facing dog is a very popular pose in any yoga flow or vinyasa yoga sequence. So definitely worth remembering the name of this one, downward facing dog. And you might like to pedal out your dog, and that means bending deeply into one knee and straightening the other, and then switching sides. So bending the other leg, and as you alternate here, that's pedaling out the legs. Some teachers like to call this taking your dog for a walk. And then exhale, bringing the knees back onto the mat, finding into all fours, tabletop position. Good job, you've done the first little bit of a sun salutation. From here, we're going to find into a low lunge. So either you can press into the hands round the spine and then step the right foot forward between your hands. But this can be quite tricky if our body isn't used to creating all the space underneath us. So you might also like to just walk the foot around the side. So heel toe, your foot to the center line, placing the hands on either side of your right foot and sinking the left hip low. So your left shin is on the mat, your back of your foot is on the mat, or you might like to tuck your left toes. So just play around here and see which one gives you added stability. And then see that your hips are squared. So what often happens is that the left hip draws backwards. We want to make sure that both of these hip bones, if you feel into this part of your body here, there's these two little bones, they're both pointing forward towards the mat. So you're in your low lunge and you option to stay here. This is your maybe first ever class, so you are welcome to stay here, or if you like, you can come up, resting the hands on the knee, finding a nice tall spine, or you might like to raise the arms up. So it's really up to you which one of the three options you'd like to play around with. Breathing here. And exhale, planting the hands back on either side of the right foot and stepping the right leg back into tabletop position. I'm going to go ahead and try this on the other side. So again, option to press into the hands, round the spine, so you're creating a lot of space underneath your body here, lifting the left knee and then stepping it forward between the hands. If that's not working for you today, you can always bring the left leg around the left side and then heel toe your foot to the center line. So the big toe of the left foot is pointing straight forward, checking the alignment that your knee is directly above your ankle, or it can track a little bit forward, but we don't want it tracking behind. So you don't want your ankle forward and then your knee behind that. So you're here in your low lunge, either with the hands on the mat, maybe even the fingertips. If you have got blocks and you can't quite reach the ground, you can always place your hands onto blocks here to bring the floor a bit closer to you. And the option to rest the hands on that left knee, finding into your low lunge, or maybe bringing the arms up to the sky. And if the arms are stretched up, you want to keep the shoulders sinking down. So don't have them drawn up towards the ears. You want them to sink down. There's a sense of lightness in the arms. And exhale, bringing the hands back down to the mat and shifting the left knee underneath your body, finding into tabletop position. Inhale, tucking the toes and pressing the hips up and back, finding your downward facing dog. Good job, breathing in and exhale out. Inhale, gaze forward, bending deeply into your knees, and then walking little steps all the way, finding your way to the top of the mat. And when you get to the top of the mat, you can have the feet hip width distance apart, keep a nice deep bend in your knee, nice deep bend in your knees, and then rolling the upper body down over the thighs. And if you have got very tight hamstrings, you might not come super far, that's fine. You don't have to round all the way down. If it's comfortable, you can hold onto opposite elbows and then gently swing from left to right. Relaxing your head so your chin draws towards your chest. If your jaw is clenched, unclenching it now. And remember to take nice deep breaths. Exhale, release the hands to the floor and then finding a halfway lift. So either the fingertips are on the mat or bringing the hands to the shins or up to the thighs, but you want to keep a nice straight line from your hip crease all the way to the crown of your head. So this whole upper part of your body is parallel to the bottom of the mat, and that's your halfway lift. Exhale, folding forward again into your forward fold, and then placing the hands on the mat next to your feet, stepping the left foot back, and the right foot back, and you're in your high plank position. Good job. And you're welcome to come through that first little push-up called chaturanga that we practiced earlier, where you come down onto your knees, keep your elbows tucked and lower all the way down to the mat. Or you can come down with the knees lifted. So that's the full chaturanga pose. So you're slowly coming down all the way onto your belly and then sliding the forearms forward again. Elbows are underneath the shoulders, palms are pressing into the mat, opening the chest and giving yourself a little smile. Good job. Exhale, release. Hands come next to the shoulders, pressing yourself up into that tabletop position. And once again, opening the knees wide, big toes to touch, sinking the hips back towards the heels and melting the upper body down into child's pose. Taking a few rounds of deep breath here. And if you'd like to intensify the stretch, you can place your palms together and then bringing the thumbs towards the base of the spine. So just where the top of your spine meets your neck joint. So you're bending at the elbows. This just helps intensify the stretch in your shoulders. This is absolutely optional. You can keep the hands flat on the mat if that feels more comfortable today. Exhale, release the hands down, gazing forward and walking the hands up towards the body. And then rolling onto your right hip, bringing the legs around and finding into our butterfly fold. So to do this, you're going to bring the bottoms of your feet together. The knees fall open to either side. And the closer you bring your heels to your body, the more intense the stretch. And the further you slide your heels away from your body, the more or the less intense it's going to be, so a little bit easier. So you can stay here, or if you like, you can hold onto the feet and then slowly rounding your spine and melting your upper body down towards your feet. And you definitely don't have to go all the way down, just as far as feels restorative and comfortable. Observe where in your body you're feeling sensation. Is it around your hips, in your lower back, your upper back, the outside of your legs? Just taking a few moments now to notice where you're feeling the sensation. Yoga is a great practice to bring our mind back into our body. So for a lot of us, we spend the whole day thinking, rushing around, talking. We're often not aware of what's actually going on in our body, unless there's an actual problem or we have pain. But just the everyday kind of realization of what our body is kind of doing, checking in with our body, can be hard to do. So now is a good time to check in. Inhale slowly, walking yourself back up, and then finding your way onto your back. So rolling all the way down, finding into a lying down position. And you want to make sure that your whole spine is on the mat. So by tilting your pelvis forward like this a little bit, you're helping your whole length of your spine make contact with the earth. And then drawing your knees in towards your chest, holding onto the knees, hugging the knees, gently rocking from left to right, feeling the gentle pressure on the lower back. And this is a really nice way to massage out any lingering tension. From here, placing your left foot onto the mat with a knee bent, and then placing the right foot on top of the left knee. So you're forming this angle shape with your right leg, and you're welcome to stay here with the hands alongside the body, or maybe you'd like to lift for the left leg and thread your right arm into that gap between your legs. Left arm comes around and grasping the outside of the knee. Your left foot will draw towards your bum, making sure that the whole spine is making contact with the earth, relaxing the head back onto the mat. Exhale, release the left foot to the mat if it was up in the air, and then placing the right foot next to your left foot comes on top of the right knee. Welcome to stay here, or lifting the right leg, threading the left arm in between the legs, right arm comes around the right side, and holding onto your right knee. Again, checking that the whole length of the spine, from the tip of your pelvic bowl all the way your lower back, mid back, upper back and the back of your head are all making contact with the earth. Your right foot is relaxing towards your right bum. And you can close down the eyes here, feeling into the sensation of the stretch across your right outer glute. And exhale, release both feet back onto the mat, stretching them out into a straight line. Finding into our final resting pose, Shavasana, which is the most important pose in yoga because we rest the body after we've practiced. So legs are spread out away from you, feet fall away from the midline. I'm bringing the arms loosely alongside your body, palms facing up. Relaxing your jaw. Closing down your eyes. And gift yourself a few moments of rest. And for many, especially in our fast-paced world, this can be the most challenging pose of the practice. So remember that yoga is just as much as about training your mind as it is your body. So resting being just as important as being active can be challenging for our minds. So I really welcome you now to challenge your mind to a bit of rest. So sensing into the rise and fall of your belly as you breathe in and out. Feel the temperature of the air as it travels in and out of your nose. And releasing any tension in your body. Taking 2 rounds of breath. And then start to wriggle your fingers and your toes. Reawaken the body, hugging the knees into the chest, and then rolling over one side, keeping the eyes closed and finding your way into a comfortable seated position. Placing the hands on the knees, finding that tall spine, eyes are closed. And find gratitude for yourself today for making the time to try out yoga. Maybe this was your very first time, so well done. Bringing the palms to touch and lowering the gaze. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you enjoyed this beginner-friendly yoga pose and that breaking down the poses made it seem less daunting. If it felt all overwhelming and you weren't able to follow, don't worry. The more you learn and the more you practice, the easier it gets, and words like downward facing dog become second nature. So if you practice consistently, hopefully you'll appreciate the joy of yoga. For me, being on my yoga mat and practicing, it doesn't matter how long, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 10 minutes or 5 minutes or just one pose or a whole class. Either way, it all counts as yoga, and I always feel like I've done something really good for myself. So I really hope that you can do the same for yourself, carve out that bit of time. If you are in the market for a nice yoga mat, I can definitely recommend this particular yoga mat. I've had this for over a year, probably almost 2 years now. It's made from natural rubber and jute fibers. Every mat that you buy plants a tree. It's from a really lovely family-owned local business. I have a special discount code for you, so if you would like to have a super grippy mat with what I find like the perfect thickness, the perfect grip, then I will leave that special link in the description box for you, so you can also save and enjoy a new yoga mat. All my love.